Something I can turn on and immediately start having fun with. But now I've got a whole video on it almost ready to go and start editing. So, only about 2 months away. When someone asks me what my favorite game is, I'll often pick one out of a few games that I hold in the highest regard. Usually the game I say depends on the person I'm talking to, whether I think they'll know or care about any given game, and if one of these games is similar to a game that they love. But there's another game. One game that I hold in just as high regard as these other titles. One game that I almost always leave off of this list. And that's because it's a little bit embarrassing. Okay, stop. That intro doesn't really work anymore. The scope of this video has changed way too much from its original starting point. Yet, despite already knowing that, I still decided to put in this cutaway joke about the intro that I cut, so it's a joke that really only I get now. And I also then proceeded to write this paragraph of me explaining what happened to act as the joke for the audience, and I don't actually know where else to take this. Anyways, Skate 3 is that game, the game that I hold in such high regard. And I want to give some context as to why it's a game that I love so much, and why I think it was the culmination of the best that the skating genre has to offer. Skating games weren't around for very long, and they haven't really been around in the same way since Skate 3 came out. Their short lifespan was due in large part to Activision's total flooding of the market with the Tony Hawk series. Okay, fine, maybe it also had to do with the fact that skateboarding's popularity was starting to die, but that was arguably caused by the oversaturation of skating games, which was the way a large new audience found their way into the sport. So there's a bit of a chicken and egg situation going on here. But the Skate series would revive the seemingly dead genre with a fresh take on the same core concept. But I'm not really here to talk about the first game. I mean, heck, I haven't even played Skate 1 or 2. I only played the Wii spin-off called Skate It and Skate 3. But the point still stands, Skate 3 is nothing like any of the skating games I had grown up playing, so it was just as impactful on me as Skate 1 was on the genre as a whole. Alright, to show just how different Skate 3 was, I'll give a demonstration. Imagine growing up with this, and then as a teen, you get this. Okay, I know how this looks, but I promise that the second one is just as fun, if not more than the first one. And we're gonna get into why, but first we're going back to the mid-aughts. We're going back to my first memory of playing a video game. This is it. My first memory of a video game. Skating around Canada in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. But this isn't exactly how I played it. For that, we're gonna need to modify.
That's right, we're gonna cheat.
And I think that resolution is a bit too high. Okay, we're getting there, but it's not quite the full experience. We've got to turn off the music for that, because Mom didn't want us listening to secular songs. Double benefit there, since YouTube doesn't particularly like the copyrighted music either. Alright, that's more like it. Except we didn't play Tony Hawk in single player. There it is. My true first memory of a video game. I think Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 is best experienced with friends doing insane combos and... I should turn the resolution back up, huh? Alright then. Actually, no, not alright then. I know I keep interrupting myself to do something that doesn't really matter, and sure, you may be saying that that's just me trying to pad out the section of the video so that it's on equal length with the other sections, but you'd be wrong there because this section is already the longest of all the sections. I just want to talk about how much of a pain in the ass it was to get widescreen working on PCSX2, I mean my PlayStation 2 Deluxe. Like, can you guess how long it took me to get the widescreen patches to work on this game? After about 3 hours of trying to get them to work, I thought it'd be funny to record it, so I have like an hour and a half of footage of me trying to get them to work and failing miserably. It kept stretching the 4x3 image into 16x9 rather than just like adding the extra space that was covered by the black bars, but I did finally get them working, as you can probably tell since you're watching this with your eyes and not tabbed out doing something else. I hope you guys appreciate the misery I put myself through for you. Also, you can tell this game wasn't even meant to be in widescreen because you can see this dude on the left here just vibing out. I often don't think that I really have any nostalgia for games. I've recently played a lot of games I grew up with, and I don't have a particular feeling about them one way or the other. At least not in any way that feels different than any other games that I play. And I always assumed that was because I didn't spend a lot of time playing games as a kid. I could only play on Fridays and only after dinner, which usually ended up being like 4 hours total for the week. So my nostalgia's just tied up in other things. But Pro Skater 3 and especially American Wasteland gave me that feeling. And I think a huge part of that is because I haven't really made new memories with these games since I was a kid. It's been over a decade since I played either of these, so I'm just like flooded with all these memories from my childhood. These games are full of style. Whether it's doing a 900 spin without a sweat, breaking your skateboard in half, knocking a pissin' Canadian off a cliff, playing 90s and early aughts butt rock, or even just the visual designs of these levels. There's an undeniable level of personality and culture and just style to the Tony Hawk series, and that all started here with the Pro Skater series. And all that style is ultimately just the hook. You get drawn in by the over-the-top style and crazy havoc you can cause, but underneath all of that you've got some incredibly solid 3D platformers, complete with missions, abilities, and hidden secrets everywhere. Racking up combos is certainly one part of the formula, but then you've got stuff like timing your jump correctly to reach this secret tape in Venice, landing on the roof to the school so you can ring the final bell, reaching these grind rails, jumping between each one to unlock the Japan secret area, and not to even mention the insane amount of gaps in each level. So gaps are basically just jumps or grinds you have to do in a very specific location. For example, grinding this rail from top to bottom is a gap, or this jump in Pro Skater 3. There's over 1,000 across Pro Skater 1, 2, and 3, and I've never really been into 100% completion, but I could see this being a really fun thing if you are a completionist. What I'm getting at here is that Tony Hawk Pro Skater isn't too far removed from your Mario 1984s or your mangy Kazooies. Just shrink the levels down, slap a timer on there, add some momentum-based movement, and bam! It's basically Tony Hawk. But you've got all of this style because something with the aesthetics of a Mario 84 wasn't gonna sell to a crowd looking for a skateboarding game. And because a skateboarding game wouldn't really be a skateboarding game without some form of that skating style. The music, the skate shop, Officer Dick, Pro Skater wouldn't really be Pro Skater without these things. I'm kind of talking about both the 1+2 remake and Pro Skater 3 here, because they're all very similar in design, just with new places and improving movement controls. In the original Pro Skater, you didn't even have manuals, so your combos were limited to whatever grinds you could just jump between. Certainly not as advanced as what we have now. 2 introduced manuals, but we still didn't have reverts, so you couldn't combo off of any vert ramp tricks. And then finally 3 gave us the most key of elements in the moveset, the revert. 4 would add spine transfers and bank transfers, which, while very helpful, I don't think they're as key to the moveset as manuals and reverts are. Playing without these elements makes the games feel incomplete, while not having transfers feel like just an interesting limit to place on maintaining your combos. But also, the 1+2 remake integrates all of these moves except for transfers into your moveset to take back into these games, making for an awesome feeling experience. You also have the option to limit your moveset to either 1 or 2's movesets. I will literally never do that, but it's great that the option's available. I absolutely love Spider-Man, so logically Pro Skater 2 should be my favorite because it has Spider-Man as a playable character there. But I've always had a softer spot for 3. It's also the biggest grudge that I hold against the 1+2 remake that Spider-Man isn't included as a playable character, even in the PS4 and 5 versions. To be honest, I never played much of Pro Skater 2, and I didn't play any of Pro Skater 1 until the remake. So that meant that Pro Skater 3 taught me what the Tony Hawk arcade formula was. A 2-minute timer, a bunch of goals to complete, and tons of optional secrets and unlockables to find. I didn't play much of the single player mode though. There were 6 boys and only 2 PlayStations after all, so like I said before, multiplayer is the way I remember this game. So I guess I should shut up and actually play the damn mode. Much like most couch co-op games, it all depends on who you play with, but I've never had a bad time playing Pro Skater 3's multiplayer modes, and we've got a few modes to go through. We've got Free Skate, which is a pretty standard fare. You go around whatever area you're in for as long as you want, do tricks, slap each other, explore, everything you could want. And all without any timer to stop you. Next up is Horse, a classic skating game. Also known as Skate, or even 1-Up if your only experience with skating is playing Skate 3. Traditionally, the rules of Horse are as follows. One skater does a trick, and then the next skater has to do the same trick or get 1 letter of the word horse. Once you get all the letters, you lose. Pro Skater takes a bit of a different approach. You don't have to do the same trick, but rather a combo that is higher in point value than the previous Skateboarders combo. And if it's lower, or you crash, then you get a letter. Not the best split-screen game, since you have to take turns playing, but I don't think you could release a skateboarding game without this all-time hood classic. Then there's King of the Hill. Slap the player with the crown to get the crown, and whoever has the crown the longest when the timer runs out wins. I don't think this mode is particularly well designed in any way, but it's fun enough for a round or two. Trick Attack is a competition to see who can get the highest scores. There's an even stronger element of that risk-reward with combos than there is in the single player. Because at any point the other player can come along and run into you and end your 3 million point combo or whatever. But if you focus too much on just ending the other player's combos, then you're gonna lose as you won't have any points yourself. You could also focus on both, hitting your opponent while you're in a manual or a grind, but that won't always work because you have to be going faster than the other player when you run into each other. And you're going to be losing that speed as you perform reverts or go up hills, both of which are inevitable things you'll do during a long combo. This is a classic mode for split screen, though not one I played much because I was too busy enjoying the next game mode. Graffiti baby! I love this game mode so much. So basically you do a combo on a skatable object, and then that object turns your color. Whoever has the most objects colored their color wins. But the twist is that if someone does a combo that's worth more points than the one you did on the same objects, then it turns their color. I think that this is the best designed minigame in the series. It still uses the same idea of risk and reward as Trick Attack because you want to keep a high combo so your objects will be harder to steal. But it also encourages you to skate around as many parts of the level as possible. This encourages a very different style of combo than the infinite grinds or long manuals encouraged by Trick Attack. But hands down, the most played game by me and my brothers was Slap. The goal of this game is simple. Slap your opponent as many times as you can. Whoever slaps the most wins. I'm sure that you can imagine why this one was popular among a bunch of brothers between 6 and 14. I know this isn't normally how I approach talking about games. Honestly, I kinda hate just doing straight up descriptions of a game's features, but I feel like it's a necessary evil here for pointing out why these modes are just so well suited for Pro Skater's design. But come on, let's get some goddamn subjectivity back in here. Graffiti is definitely my favorite mode to play nowadays, but as much fun as Graffiti is, and even Slap back in the day, my favorite memories were when we'd turn on Free Skate and just explore these giant levels. Of course, we'd still try to knock each other off of our boards because we're still brothers, but a lot of the time was spent trying to unlock secrets because there's so many in this game. You've got this secret in Tokyo, which was always the hardest for us to open up. You've got the secret pirate ship in the skate park, or getting inside the house in the suburbs. There were so many secrets, and we were always looking for more. When playing the game now, I don't really want to play with all the cheats and stuff that we did as kids. And I think that's because the fun of the game back then was just testing the limits of the games, and also just laughing together, of course. But now I'm more interested in experiencing the intended design, I think, and I feel like it's helped me find a whole new appreciation for these games. A lot more than I did as a kid. But even Pro Skater 3 at its best doesn't come close to American Wasteland. Similar to Pro Skater 3, most of my time in American Wasteland was spent in the multiplayer mode. But unlike Pro Skater 3, I actually did complete the campaign at one point in American Wasteland. I didn't spend nearly as much time in the campaign as I did in split screen, but I have finished the campaign mode at least twice. Although my multiplayer roots are showing because I didn't even know this game had a classic mode that was more in line with the Pro Skater campaigns, in addition to its normal story mode. I sat down to try it out, and I actually ended up making it all the way through the classic mode in one sitting. But I don't really think it's anything to sneeze at. It's fun as much as a Tony Hawk game can't avoid being fun, but most of the levels are reused from previous games, which isn't really an inherent problem, and it was cool to see some of these levels with the fancy PS2 graphics, but the Thaw engine doesn't really work well in this context, and the classic formula in general doesn't really fit with the new moveset. For starters, I ran into a few really wacky bugs, mostly caused by weird landings from transfers. Nothing game-breaking, just very noticeable, but also there's some skate letters that were clearly placed so you'd have to make a jump from a grind or something. But here you can just get off your board and grab them super easily. Or maybe the problem is just that the parkour system is way more powerful than it has any right to be, and I love it for that. It makes sense that the classic mode wouldn't have as much time put into it given the scope of the main campaign, and also the Tony Hawk games have been leaning away from that more arcadey style ever since Pro Skater 4. And speaking of the campaign, I think that it's about time we get to it. I don't have much to say about the main campaign. Its humor is just about being over the top, which is really funny at times, like when this guy pulls a rocket launcher out of his suitcase and tries to shoot a construction worker. The story is kinda just a bunch of stuff like that, but also collecting pieces for your skate park. So rather than do a plot breakdown, I'll just talk about some of the stuff that stood out to me. The first thing I noticed when I booted up the game was that these talking animations look suspiciously like the ones in Madagascar on PS2. Particularly this one guy and the penguins, although maybe that's just general PS2 janky animation. Then there's sketching. I'm not really sure if sketching was in the Underground games because I haven't played them, but it's new as far as I was concerned coming from Pro Skater. I remember my brother actually doing this on the back of my dad's scooter while he drove it, and it did not end very well. Oh, you also get a sketch on a dog. Somehow. The gas station is called 69, and the prices are an arm and a leg. Both of these jokes went over my head as a kid. Useless Dave tells you to get this statue of a naked woman, but the statue is fully clothed. Useless Dave is just trying to disguise his love of the arts as him being horny. I also like how Useless Dave is just like a huge fan of the Tony Hawk games, even if the fourth wall breaking jokes aren't really that funny themselves. Whenever you get a skate park piece downtown, they just go flying away in the general direction of the skate park. Somehow at the AmJam competition, George here gets 4,000 points in less than a second. This has no story relevance, I just wanted to point out that George is cheating, and I think he's unhealthy for this community. Speaking of AmJam, your skater credits Iggy for his success at the contest, but literally the only thing Iggy taught you was that lame move where you put your hand on the ground to turn, a move that I didn't even use during this contest. And the reason I wasn't using it was because flips are so OP that I was exclusively doing them. There is a cult of shirtless, shoeless men that you join in order to get to Santa Monica. There's also a lot of just generally questionable stuff, like a weird amount of anti-union propaganda, very racist ideas, hating on homeless people, etc. All these make the game feel a little bit uncomfortable to play, and I laugh at some of it just because of how out of left field it felt at some points, but yeah, not amazing, especially coming out of Activision. While American Wasteland essentially has you doing the same things as Pro Skater, like get this many points, do a big combo, do a specific trick in a specific place, collect items, whatever else, the situations that you're doing them in are much more varied. Like, rather than just get 10,000 points in a combo, it instead asks you to knock over a giant dinosaur head that will chase some protesters away, and you have to do that by doing a 10,000 point combo. I think the open structure of American Wasteland is a lot more fun than the more traditional Pro Skater formula. I like being able to explore the levels at my own pace and do challenges when I feel like it. Not to mention seeing the challenges actually go towards something rather than just some ambiguous completed goal is really nice. The ability to get off your board and parkour makes exploring the levels much easier, and that's something that's much more important when you don't have a 2-minute timer ticking down. I still like the Pro Skater games, but I think that this structure is much more fitting of a skateboarding game. And there's probably a reason why most stuck with this structure going forward. I really like American Wasteland. Probably more than I even remember liking it. The try-hard characters in these cutscenes, the weird way they'll just run away, and just general PS2 jank. I love the open world combined with the regular trick system. I love the stupid mission requirements that are like, not a spin on the end of this tower to knock it over. I love this game, and all of its flaws only really add to the experience for me. The Pro Skater games are great, but I'll always prefer this more open style without the timer always hanging over your head. Which might be why Skate 3 is my favorite of all of them. Because in addition to an even more open structure than American Wasteland, Skate 3 focuses on capturing the visceral feeling of skateboarding. It makes even something as simple as a flip trick feel satisfying with how you have to flick the stick around. And the low placement of the camera focusing heavily on the board itself along with these sound effects of your board slamming the ground or really scraping that ledge help with this. While Tony Hawk is more about how a combo feels as a whole, with stuff like only playing that sound when you do a special. Its camera is also placed higher above you with more focus on your skater and the area around you. I think that both of these capture the feeling of skateboarding just in different ways. Like, Skate 3 sets expectations pretty well with its first mission. Just flip trip, just flip trip, just flip trick into the spank. And while that may not look like much, playing it feels just as intense as this. And I think that a lot of that can be attributed to its sound design. Tony Hawk has this big sound effect for when you do a big trick, and not really any sound effects for smaller things like kickflips or pop shove-its. Because Tony Hawk isn't trying to emphasize the smaller individual pieces. It's trying to emphasize the combo as a whole. With Skate 3 though, those individual pieces are where the emphasis is. It's easier to mess up a flip trick or flub it into an ollie or some other flip. It's easy to crash, so hitting the ground and staying on your board is met with this big slam of wheels against hard ground. Skate 3 emphasizes that feeling of barely making it through its sound design, and it gives more of a tactile feeling of skating through its controls. When you do a flip trick in Skate 3, you don't just press a button in a direction. You flick the stick just like you'd flick a board. Grabs aren't done through button combos, buttons are assigned to each limb, and you decide which limbs to put on or take off your board to create the grab that you want. And then you tweak the grab with the stick, just like you would move it around with your arms. This much more closely mimics the actual execution of skateboarding compared to Tony Hawk. Obviously you can't do it exactly because you're still just holding a controller and not riding a real board, but it's an amazing approximation. And it truly gets you holding tight onto your controller as you try to stay balanced while performing tricks. I think another way that Skate 3 emulates the feeling of real skating is through the addition of session markers. A big component of skating is trying to hit a line, and you're never going to do it in your first try. So you go for it over and over again until you finally hit it. Session markers encourage this exact way of playing. You can set one down anywhere and then teleport right back to it with 2 button presses. This lets you restart any custom line you're trying to hit and encourages you to try it as many times as you want. I think this is why I enjoy playing Skate 3 so much more than the Tony Hawk games that I grew up with, because Tony Hawk is ultimately about one thing: maintaining a combo to get as high a score as possible, while Skate 3 can be about whatever you want. This game encourages whatever playstyle you see fit. It encourages just doing stuff to look cool, it encourages crashing in the funniest ways possible, it encourages doing Tony Hawk style combos if you practice enough, it encourages skating as realistically as you want. While I know there's also many ways to express yourself through play in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, I often just end up doing whatever is most optimal. Whereas with Skate 3, I feel like I'm able to express myself more because of its smaller scale of focus. Playing Skate 3 is one of the last things I can remember doing with my brother before he moved out. Well, playing with maybe isn't the right way to say it. More like me and some of my brothers were in the basement, and we'd occasionally pass the controller around when we got sick of watching someone fail a mission. Our favorite thing to do would be the Hall of Meat missions. Big surprise, I know. We just throw ourselves off of buildings and see how far we could get. It's kind of funny. We could play at the same time in any of the Tony Hawk games we owned, but Skate 3 was so viscerally satisfying that we couldn't stop watching. I don't really get to see nearly as much as I'd like to anymore, and the times that we have a conversation beyond just typical pleasantries is even rarer. I wish they weren't so rare though. I have a lot to thank that guy for. But playing these games, not only Skate 3, but all of these games, has dredged up a lot of old memories, which only makes me miss him and my other brothers even more. I know I can't go back in time, and I know there was a lot wrong back then that I just didn't see as a kid, but I do miss these people. And I feel like these skateboarding games are forever linked together with those guys, and the last time we were all together regularly. I know some of you are watching, and hi, I love you guys, with all my heart. We should play Warzone or Rocket League together soon. I was having a bit of a mini crisis last year. Activision had sent every development studio that they owned to go work on Call of Duty. This was shortly after the Activision-owned studios Toys for Bob and Vicarious Visions had released Crash 4 and the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1+2 remake, respectively. Toys for Bob had also done the Spyro remakes a few years prior. All of these are series from my childhood, and now they won't be making anything like that ever again. It felt like a lot of my childhood was disappearing. Then, a couple months later, it was revealed that there was going to be a Pro Skater 3+4 remake, which obviously got canned when everyone got sent to the Call of Duty mines. Then, it was revealed that Skate 4 is going to be a live service game. All this was kind of a punch in the face of what gaming has become. Yes, games have been doing live service models for a while, but I've always just been able to ignore it or not play it. Stuff like Fortnite or League of Legends or Destiny 2, just games and genres I don't have an interest in. But now it's coming from my home turf of skate. And obviously games have always been a business, and the bigwigs' goals have always been to make as much money as possible. I mean, heck, most of these skating games were made as a cash-in on the skating trend. But it wasn't possible to monetize games as egregiously as they're able to now. and that level of greed on display only increases year over year. It got me really down because it feels like we're never getting any skating games ever again. I don't think indies have quite captured the same gameplay and aesthetic that I want from a skating game. I mean, Skateboard is probably the closest to Tony Hawk that we have right now, but even that isn't quite what I want. Skater XL was almost a Skate 4, but it feels so stiff. Every move feels robotic, and it takes Skate's flick system and replaces simplicity with realism. And it's not particularly fun to me. Ollie Ollie is really fun, but it's fun for completely different reasons than Tony Hawk and the skate games are. It just doesn't fill the same gap. And it's sad to think that one of my favorite genres of games died and came back, only to die again for the same causes. But playing these games brought my spirits back up. And it reminded me how fun these games are, even if I've already played them. Not to mention, it also reminded me how many there are that I haven't played yet. American Wasteland is way more fun than it has any right to be, and from what I know, Underground 1 and 2 have a lot of the same DNA. And even Pro Skater 4 before that was leaning towards this same type of progression. There's also more skate with the first two games, which I've also barely touched. Not to mention new stuff like Session. This game has a similar style to Skate, but without completely copying it, and without being quite as stiff as Skater XL. I've also seen this game's Skate Story, which just looks sick as hell, and Thug Pro, which still has an active modding scene. There is still hope for the future of skateboarding games, and I'm so excited to play all these games, and maybe even share the journey here. Okay, but like seriously, the Skate Story looks so good. I keep coming back and watching the trailer just because it gives me hope. It gives me hope for the future. Yeah. I am very sorry that this video ended up taking 8 fucking months to come out. That's my bad. But it's here now, and I won't say for sure that the next one will take less than 8 months. But, you know, we can all hope. So, yeah, do the YouTube things. Make sure to smash that like button. And if you aren't subscribed already, make sure to hammer that subscribe button. Did you know that only this percent of people are subscribed to my channel, or something like that? I think Dream does that. He has a lot of viewers. So yeah, be part of the whatever percent. Honestly, I kind of hate that I said which video was coming next in my last video, the best of 2022 or whatever, because I kind of wanted to work on something else for a large portion of the time I was working on this, and it just kind of felt like I had to finish this first. So I will not say what I think my next video will be, but just know that it's something I'm very passionate about. Okay, love you, goodbye.